No. All right. Thank you all so much for coming out today. We're thrilled to see everybody's smiling faces here. I'm Megan Shaw. I'm the Managing Director of Life Sciences at Innovation Works. And today we're here in AlphaLab Health, which is our healthcare accelerator that we run in the suburban general hospital. AlphaLab Health is a collaboration between Innovation Works and Allegheny Health Network. It's a healthcare accelerator to help early stage life science companies get to market faster. We provide funding, space, and education here today. Be happy to share more about that. We have a number of colleagues here and a number of the companies in the space today. Before we get going, I want to thank my team for helping to put this together. Ray, Jane, Jordan, Dwayne, Maria, you guys have been great. So thank you so much for that. And I also want to thank the caterers. Cheyenne Bronzel at Fat Girls of Cooking is part of the kitchen incubator here in the space downstairs. And she was actually featured in CBS Pittsburgh yesterday. So kudos to her. You guys will get to try that food after this. But I am really thrilled to be here today on a topic that is near and dear to my heart. As some of you know, Innovation Works takes board observer seats on the companies that we invest in through our seed fund. And in that capacity, I sit on a dozen boards as a board observer. And through that experience, I have personally seen how not diverse many of the early stage company boards around here are. There is a very standard set of people who are, generally cis white men between the ages of 45 and 60 that make up a large portion of what we see. And so as somebody who believes that a diversity of opinion around the table is beneficial, this is a topic I've been very interested in. And through some of these conversations, I was introduced to Janelle and Shelly and was able to put together this event tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Janelle, and then she's going to do an overview of kind of the value of diversity and some of the trends we're seeing. And then we're going to have an excellent panel discussion with Shelly and Ozzie, who will be joining us on Zoom. So without further ado, Janelle Brittain is CEO and founder of the Dynamic Performance Institute. She's an internationally known board and corporate consultant, executive coach, leadership trainer, keynote speaker, and facilitator. She's been a board consultant and assessor for 28 years and has served on a variety of types of boards herself for 47 years. For 12 years, Janelle was director of the Boardology Institute for Boardroom Bound, which focused on bringing diverse people onto corporate boards. And she was a managing director of the Mastermind Advisory Board, an organization which created custom corporate advisory boards. She's been an executive coach to the C-suite for 25 years, developing high potential leadership skills, proactive growth management, helping to improve communication and team building, leading change and handling challenging people situations across the globe. She has a specialty in coaching technically minded executives, especially in high tech and healthcare. So yay, Innovation Works companies. Brittain has published 2 management books and 4 healthcare books. Over 100 business publications have quoted her, such as the Wall Street Journal, Investors Business Daily, Crane's Chicago Business, and the Chicago Tribune. She's traveled here today from Chicago to join us, and we're very honored by that. So let's welcome Janelle today, as she'll be helping us to understand the current board climate around creating diverse boards.
As a company is going through its various maturation stages, it starts to ask, should we have a board? When is the right time to have a board? As you are looking at those kinds of questions, it's important to know that there's a lot of different kinds of boards. There's at least 4 different kinds of corporate advisory boards, about 4 different kinds of private company boards, several different gradations of public company boards. There's hybrid boards. There's ESOP boards. Which one, when, and how? Logical questions as a company is growing. How many of you here have boards? Let's just start. Okay, cover 2. Okay. Why did you start a board?
Because we had investors and they told us we had to.
Okay. Very good. that is getting to be more and more common. Why did you start a board?
I actually was not involved in starting the board.
Okay.
I work for a small company. There's about 20 people. I joined maybe 3 months ago.
Okay.
And they just kind of advise us, and we make decisions and we bring things to them and they give us guidance.
Okay. Guidance and feedback and ideas. Okay, good. And someone else raised their hand. Was there someone else? Okay. There are a lot of reasons to start a board as you are maturing. When you want to prevent the company from making strategic mistakes, it would be good to have someone to advise you to prevent that. Well, how about prevent making technical mistakes? So many of you here are in the technical fields. How about to provide connections for fundraising? Connections for potential customers? And then there are those who are more experienced than you are in taking a company from where your company is through all of the maturation stages until a successful exit. Wouldn't that be a nice person to have on your board to help guide you to that same place? And then there are those that have that bigger perspective of the overall landscape, that can ask the challenging questions that make you stop and ask yourself, well, why did I do that? Why am I thinking that way? To question yourself. One of the challenges with founders is that they generally feel they're right, that their product is perfect and they're approaching it in just the right way. But it is helpful to have another perspective, again, to prevent yourself from making mistakes. So where do you look in order to find these kinds of people? I would say that traditionally, the above the table approach and the traditional business board philosophy has been you look for CEOs, investors or bankers, occasionally an SME, but they all tend to be homogenous, look alike. What's below the table is an unconscious board culture. So how did we get this unconscious board culture? We have been trained to think that the people sitting around a board table need to be white men. Why? Because that's what we saw in the pictures, the movies. Everywhere we looked, it was white men. So we thought, well, that's what a board should be, right? Now that sounds silly, doesn't it? I mean, as I say that to you, you're all smart people. You have a lot of friends representing all different kinds of nationalities, backgrounds, different, both genders, all of that. But when it comes to a board, we don't think of it in those terms. One of the things that you deny yourself of if you don't have a diverse board is a huge talent pool. There is an amazing group of talented, ready for board people out there who are not in that first homogeneous category that we talked about. And the other interesting thing about them is, and I would include myself in it, but maybe perhaps saying some of the us part of it, is that we have had to work doubly hard to make it in business. So in order for people to go up within the corporate world, there was unconscious bias in the corporate world. So that they had to have more degrees, more certifications, more experience, spend more years proving themselves to get where they are. So by the time they come to the board, they often are much more capable than the other homogeneous group. And they are more resilient because they have gone through so much. And they're much more of the determined to succeed aspect. You're not going to beat me down aspect, right? Do you want that on your board? Yes. As part of the board diversity movement back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, I and many others were working to try to create more diverse boards. we were talking to boards, we were talking to corporations and saying, don't you want to have a diverse board? It's the right thing to do. We got nowhere. What we had to do was this long list of things I'm about to share with you. We worked at the state and federal level, every state and the federal government, seeking to make regulations that first public and now also private companies need to do in order to have either diverse boards or show what they're doing to have to recruit people for diverse boards. And that has taken a very long time. We also have been working with large investors, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, AXA, some of the most influential investors in the world who said, yes, they understand the benefits. So they are putting pressure on those companies that they are investing in. And then, of course, there are the big, powerful pension funds that invest, CalPERS and CalSTRS. And then there are coalitions of investors. There's the 30% coalition. They have $6 trillion to invest. Would you like a piece of that? They are working on both gender and people of color on boards. Then there are investors who sue the companies because they don't have a diverse board, because they set up a plan and never carried it through. They didn't walk the talk. Another example, going back to AXA, is in a couple of years ago, they made this statement: they will punish companies in developed markets that fail to appoint at least 1/3 women on their boards by using their stock to vote against the board. And in the first year that they had that, they voted against 200 corporate board resolutions. So they're using their power. Investment advisors like ISS, who advise billions, are advising that people should not invest in companies that don't have diverse boards. Then there are the activist investors who will put forward resolutions every annual meeting. And then there are the stock exchanges, NASDAQ, Russell, New York Stock Exchange, all have various requirements. And the SEC. Well, that's a long list. We've been working a while. So as we look at all of those, I want to just also highlight some of the strategies. Some of the strategies are what I would call subtle, for subtle change. And we would ask that a company make their recruitment visible. Ask that they make their numbers visible on an annual report. To whom? Who's interested in that? Investors, stakeholders, communities, customers, employees are all interested. And boards never used to be in the press, and now they're on the front page. So the visibility of boards is important. To those more strict regulations, for instance, well, not regulations like Axis stance, but NASDAQ said to any company that is on NASDAQ, these are the rules now. And they summarized it in 3 words: diversify, disclose, or delist. That's serious. Now, in these kinds of discussions, we often talk about statistics. Well, now we're going to do that. But as I share those statistics with you, I'd like for you to think about what insights do these statistics bring to you? In the late 1990s, when I began in this, the S&P 500 had only 10% women on the boards. But by 2012, 85% had at least one woman on the board. 2019, all S&P companies had at least one woman on the board. Some progress there. And now 27% of all board seats on the S&P are women. And as of a year ago, Russell 3000, one of the most conservative platforms, 37% of the board are women in the Russell listings. This is a good trend, isn't it? We like this. However, there are only 10% women on joint venture boards. And we don't know how many women are on private company boards because it's private information. It's hard to gather that information. Our best guesses are that private companies are in the lower numbers, shall we say. And well, as we look at corporate trends start with public companies, and then private companies start to see the benefits, and then they start to change too. So what's our takeaway here? Anybody, what those few statistics I was sharing with you, what are you seeing here?
Got a little work to do.
Got a little work to do. Yep, you're right. We've made some progress, but we still have more work to do for sure. So let's talk for a moment about this category we call minorities. I'm not real comfortable with the term minorities. I think a more accurate description would be underrepresented groups in the boardroom. And whether you are talking about African American, Black, Hispanic, Asian, South Pacific, LGBTQ+, etc., there are so many categories that are not seen in our boardrooms. And I think, well, actually, statistics would show that they are actually the majority. So I think the more appropriate term is the underrepresented majority is not seen in the boardroom. So we're going to hear from some wonderful representatives very soon about some resources that are available. I don't want to be redundant with some of the points that they might be making as well. So let me just give you a couple other contexts here. There are about 22% of the S&P company board directors who identify as minorities. And Fortune 500 companies board of directors, about 48% say that they are non-white in that category. And we use different terminology. And let's get a big picture. The civilian labor force, what is that made up of? Who's out there working? 37% are white males and 44% are racial or ethnic minorities. But of the Fortune 100 corporate boards, 66% are white men. About 20% are racial or ethnic minorities, and only 5% are women of color. Yes, we have work to do. The Latinos make up close to 20% of the US population, but they have only 4% of board positions on the Fortune 500 companies, and Latinas only 1%. This is embarrassing. Let me step aside from the statistics for a moment and talk about behind the scenes and what that's like. In 2004, I went to the annual meeting of Bank One. I was a stockholder, and that was right when they were merging, if you might remember, with JP Morgan. And at that meeting, Bill Harrison was running the meeting. After the meeting, if you've ever been to an annual meeting, the mics are open and shareholders can come ask questions. So I went and asked the question, what are you doing to create a more diverse board? Bill Harrison said, we have a hard time finding qualified, diverse board candidates. And I said, well, I'm with Boardroom Bound, an organization that has thousands of women and minorities who are qualified for boards. May I share my business card with you? I walked up to the front and handed it to him. Do you think I ever got a call? Which goes to the core of some of the problem, is that attitude. Now that was 2004, and let's hope that we're a little bit better. But I just bring that up because it is stubbornness in some cases and comfort zones and things like that that we're dealing with. Now those state laws that we're talking about with some of the more subtle kinds of laws, there are at this point about 13 states that have laws that help to make more visible the diverse strategies and outcomes. But California, for instance, has the most strict with some quotas. Privately held companies, how do we find out information on them? Again, it's a little more difficult, but I do have a couple of things to share with you that, and let me put this in perspective. Public companies, of all the companies out there, what percentage of companies are public companies? Anybody know? He says like 2%. 98% of all US companies are privately held companies. Think about that. So all we hear about in the press are public, public, public. And it seems like they're bigger than the private sector. So in that context, in 2019, a study of 200 of the most heavily funded US private venture-backed companies, they found that 60% had no women on the board. And of all of the women that were on, the 40% that was left was only 7%. But private companies are realizing the competitive edge that having a diverse board can have. In the United States, we are kind of proud about being business leaders. I think we view ourselves as global role models, don't we? She laughs. Anybody who's traveled, but at any rate. There's an organization in the UK that does a global study every year it's called Boardex of 26 major countries, looking at the publicly held companies and the percentage of women on public company boards across 26 countries. So across those 26 countries, where on that ranking list do you think the United States stands? 26, he said. That is pessimistic. We're a little bit higher than that. It's 14th. And as we look at what it is that the 13 above us are doing that we're not doing, there's two major factors. Anybody have any ideas about what we could do more of, that other countries are doing? Okay, quotas. The country, like federal quotas in France and Spain and other countries say 40% have to be women, 30%, whatever the EU is looking at it as well. And then the other major category is the countries that did not use quotas, but were much higher than us. Their culture is more equal equity in equal between genders, so that it's not a question. Women are just on the boards because it's just how we function in that culture. So what are the benefits of having a diverse board? I have a compilation of studies about Yay Thick at Home that show all of the different kinds of performance factors that have been proven for companies that have diverse boards versus those companies that don't. For instance, the increased ROI, increased return on investment, increased ROE, increased EBITDA margins, and a study of over 1,000 companies by McKinsey said that their data set shows that companies whose boards are in the top quartile, it's hard to say, of gender diversity are 28% more likely to have to outperform their peers. In other words, to do better than their competition. Another study says 36%. Would you like to do better than your competition? Giving yourself that edge, 28 to 36% better, simply by having diverse people on the board. Scratch your head on that one. Well, there are other performance factors to look at. There is better risk management strategies by companies who have diverse boards. Now, that was exemplified royally when COVID hit. That many of the companies that had diverse boards had already strategies prepared for similar kinds of situations because they thought outside the box in that way. They had better resiliency during challenging times, better growth than their competitors. They have higher price book value multiples. The investors are more interested in investing in them. Goldman Sachs announced in 2020, and this is for any of you who think you would like to go public one day. They said they will not take a company public unless that company has at least one diverse board member. That's powerful. It's a powerful statement. And there's more, as they say. more diverse knowledge sitting around that table, more diverse insights sitting around that table, help you make better decisions than a homogeneous group of minds. The challenge with homogeneous thinking is sometimes what we call groupthink. And in a groupthink scenario, ideas are not challenged. Innovation is not sought. Risk management is not pursued. So that you can be surprised with, oh, we never thought of that. That happened. Wow, what are we going to do? So that you have to be reactive rather than proactive. Help you be better prepared for the unknown by having all of those minds around the table and not ignoring that huge talent pool out there. Pulling all of these thoughts together, there are significant costs if you don't have a diverse board. The company may not perform to its potential or make the preventable mistakes. Diverse leadership within the company often happens when there's a more diverse board, so that the culture all the way throughout the company attracts better talent. So customers also show preference for companies that walk their talk, that represent them. Attracting talent has become so crucial in today's world, hasn't it? Hard to find good talent. Well, who are we looking for? Where are we looking for them? What biases might we have? So if you want to set your company up for success, make sure that you have diverse people on your board, representing many different perspectives, knowledge, and insights, whether it is women, African American, Black, Hispanic, LGBTQ+, or any other ethnic or underrepresented groups in the boardroom. And if you're feeling challenged with doing this, that's why this group is here, and I am here to help. And you're going to be hearing from 2 other people who are here to help, so that there are resources to be able to help you put together the best talented board to help your company be successful.
Janelle, thank you so much for that excellent overview of the value of boards, of a diverse board. So now we are really fortunate to be joined by 2 panelists who bring unique perspectives on both the value of diverse boards, but also the resources that are available to help you. So I'll introduce you both and then let you tell a little bit about your organizations to start us off. So first we have Shelly Hammond, who is the Vice President of Programs for the Advanced Leadership Institute. In this role, Shelly drives programming and partnerships to support the mission of the Advanced Leadership Institute, to educate, develop, connect, and position Black leaders for executive advancement. Shelly's career has included time in the government, nonprofit, and corporate sectors. At the core of all her experience is the desire to engage and develop people to strive for excellence. Previously, Shelly was a Senior Vice President at PNC, where she led teams to provide information, products, and services to meet the deposit, lending, credit card, and cash management needs of more than 8 million retail bank customers. Prior to banking, Shelly was an officer in the United States Air Force with key tours at NASA Edwards Air Force Base, RAF Lakenheath, UK, in support of Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield, and as a member of the Air Education and Training Command via the University of Maryland. She completed her service with a captain's rank. Shelly holds a BA in journalism, a master's degree in public administration, and a master's certificate in project management.
Let's make me tired.
Yeah. She's an ardent supporter of adult literacy, professional career preparation, and development for underserved populations and military members transitioned back into the civilian world. She's a multi-year winner of the Gallup Great Workplace Award, recognizing excellence in employee engagement, a priority that is personally and professionally important to her. And she has a daughter, Brianne, who specializes in computer programming and resides in Seattle, Washington. Do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about so?
You want me to go or you want to introduce him? Which way would you like to go? I'm good either way.
I'll go ahead and introduce you, Ozzie, and then I'll hand it back off to you, okay? All right. So we're fortunate to have Ozzie Meza. He's the Vice President of Member and Talent Services for Latino Corporate Directors Association and a board member of the Association of LGBTQ Corporate Directors. Ozzie's career has included time in boutique search firms, consulting and Fortune 1000 organizations. As the lead for Member and Talent Services at LCDA, he is responsible for all aspects of demand and talent services, which focuses on working directly with board decision makers to connect them with diverse talent. Through his work, LCDA has influenced the diversity makeup of numerous Fortune 1000 boards, including PayPal, Ameriprise Financial, Sleep Number, Big Lots, and Zion Bank Corporation. Prior to LCDA, Ozzie was an intelligence lead at James Drury Partners, a leading board advisory services firm, where he focused on aligning C-level executives with board of director opportunities. Earlier in his career, Ozzie played a key role in developing the executive recruiting function at Allstate Insurance, including spearheading the build-out of one of the first talent intelligence teams within talent acquisition. Ozzie holds a BS in Information Systems and an MS in Library and Information Science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Ozzie and his husband are the proud parents of twins and calls Reno, Nevada home. And Ozzie does have the cutest twins. They came into one of our calls and they're just adorable. Thank you both so much for being here. Shelly, maybe you could start us off telling us a little bit about the Advanced Leadership Institute.
Absolutely, and I think a couple other things that you brought up, and I think, I just want to throw these things out here because I think this kind of dispels where our heads land. So I've lived outside of London for 3 years. My daughter was actually born, she's got dual citizenship there. Lived in Paris, I've lived around the world. I love throwing my stuff in a bag and staying somewhere. So getting to know and understand and see the world, and getting back to your points. So often we assume people do or they don't have that kind of perspective around things, and that perspective can be a lot broader than you might think. So I think that that's important. Well, a thing that for me personally is just so important is, you know, whenever we're meeting somebody where they are, what assumptions are we making? What assumptions aren't we making? I have, you may know the name Jeff Broadhurst, and he's one that works with our companies very closely. I've known him for a really long time, and I love this guy because we were talking about somebody thought they were being relevant, making a comment about slavery. And he's standing with me and we kind of start chuckling. Well, both my grandparents were college educated in 1800, so. But again, you wouldn't think that, but you're making a comment that, oh, slavery, I know it wasn't fair. Okay, well, let me know how that worked out for you then. No context here. So the reason why I say that is with the Advanced Leadership Institute, that's one of the key pieces. We are ingrained. We actually embedded with a CMU at this point, but we work with a number of different schools. We work with Robert Morris, we work with Stanford, Columbia, a number of different schools in regards to the academic components of the program. And what we do with that academic piece is take it and think about, we were talking about this before we started, how situationally are you able to leverage and use that? And exactly what we're talking about is why it's so important. We sit here and say there's no talent. Yeah, okay, like, where are you looking? Because every single person is coming through here, and my favorite example to give you is Dr. Rebecca Uwe. She's the medical director for HN, bless her. And it's funny, she's getting ready to go get our master's degree through and her MBA through Carnegie Mellon University. But again, she goes to a conference just recently, and everybody's got their name and they've got MD on there and a bunch of other stuff, and it's all in the same places. Why did everybody come up to her and say, oh, are you from Maryland? Really? Like, oh, was that the only name tag that wasn't printed correctly? Really? But again, and here's the guy, there's nothing malicious about it. It's the parent of very little. We live in. So I unfortunately see my daughter living that as well, just in computer program. Both of us, unfortunately, predominantly male places. I started obviously in the Air Force, and then of course through a major banking. She's in computer programming, and all of that circles back to why the Advanced Leadership Institute, what we do at TALI, is so important to me. There are intelligent, agreed, experienced, committed people that can just bring such amazing things to the table to help move people forward. And again, I just always cringe when people say, oh, we don't know where to find it. Well, guess what? I have 200 at my fingertips that I can talk to you about. So it really is a matter of just thinking a little bit more broadly, being willing to actually seek. I think another thing, especially from my banking experience, I think we get very comfortably complacent. We're all running 100 miles an hour every day. So when I'm driving home tonight, it's, oh crap, I was supposed to talk to this person about attending this board meeting. I didn't get to. Wait, I can call somebody I know. They'll come and they'll go, and we'll just go ahead and get them plugged in. And I think that's the catch that happens so many times is we start thinking about where to look. And then we have to think about, am I going to be uncomfortable and engaging in those conversations and how it is that I have to pursue effectively looking. And we need to be uncomfortable about it. That's where progress is made. So again, I would challenge everyone, have courage, be brave, and to be, because just given my background, that isn't that like brave and courageous. Yeah, ask a couple questions, get a feel for there. I think most people be very pleasantly surprised in regards to that engagement that you get into. That is truly where we, as a country, and that's why we chuckle, we were talking about, we always think we're the forefront. If you live in London for a while, you'll be embarrassed when I come home with little glasses and pencil. And again, but again, us engaging in that conversation, and to me, that's the power of our country. Engaging in those conversations, truly getting mutually invested in each other to pull the best to the table and rise above all of this. We have that in us. It's in the DNA of this country. We have to continue to use it more broadly to be successful. So for TALI, that's one of the critical things that we work on. We have cohorts that come through. We have an emerging leaders program and an executive leadership program. Our executive leaders are people who are poised, if not already sitting in C-suites. I'm very super excited because there's 7 personally that I just helped over the past several months move into some really, really great roles. And that's my thing. I love it. I absolutely love paying this forward right now. So anyone in here, and even when you may think that, oh, but it's a technology company. Yeah, I got that too. I got a whole bunch of that. We have a geosciences. This is in our emerging leader class. You're talking the junior class. These are young people. Geosciences, I was so excited to finally have a wonderful young lady who works at PPG. First person that I've known through the program that knew what I was talking about in regards to stealth technology. We were just together every night actually talking about that. But again, 3 attorneys sitting in this cohort. So again, there are tons of talented people who can fit the needs. Here's the bigger piece, and this is the thing that really scares me. People, there's a huge share of wallet that comes with that. There's a huge share of wallet. I always joke when people come, oh, but it's a for-profit board. Okay, I knew that when we call, oh, we're gonna have to write a check for $50,000. Okay, like it's just, and it's insane to me that we still just have these really laid out paradigms, but, oh, you couldn't do that, right? Yeah, okay, well, you might want to think again about that. So again, I just challenge everybody, ask the question, be open to what the answers are, probably be pleasantly surprised what the opportunities are. And you get some really committed people. I was raised on failure is not an option. And it's just not an option. So I think there's people who need that. I think we absolutely need that. Merchant companies succeed, and a whole bunch of other people who think failure is not an option too. So please do, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Shelly. Ozzie, could you tell us a little bit about LCDA and your work?
Absolutely. And Shelly and Janelle, I wish I was there with you all. But I'm glad I'm here because it's snowing really heavily here at Reno, so I probably wouldn't have made it out.
It's 70 degrees here. Can you believe that?
Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. And to answer the question, Latino Corporate Directors Association is a very unique organization as it's the only Latino-based organization that is focused on advancing equitable representation of Hispanic Latinos on corporate boards. And the mission is very, very simple because we need a lot of work to continue to do this area of work. And our pillars of work are really framed on 3 areas. One is growing and identifying the supply. We are the only organization that is methodically identifying and tracking Hispanic Latinos at the executive level on both private and public, who we believe today should be on public boards. Through that, we've been able to grow our organization, which is a national non-for-profit membership-based organization, to over 520 members and growing, with 60% of those members being experienced corporate directors and 40% of them being board aspiring in the C-suite P&L leaders, and so on and so forth. In addition to that, we are tracking over 4,000 Hispanic Latinos and growing, once again, that we believe should be on boards today. And that work has been extremely pivotal for us to be able to really influence our second framework of work, which is to grow the demand. And this is where I'm really appreciative to have this conversation with everyone. That's where we are a game changer. So while we work with organizations directly, CEOs, NAMGov chairs, we let them know via letter campaigns or through referrals that we are concerned that they don't have an inclusive board, which means it doesn't include a Hispanic Latino on there. And what we do is we make sure that they know that we are concerned, once again, but as well that we're here to connect them to that talent. So I lead the talent services group at LCDA, which is really focused on making sure that I bring a solution and become a resource for those organizations. And as Megan shared in the intro, through this work, we've been able to make successful introductions that led to appointments to those organizations, as she has mentioned. But we work both with private and public. Now, we also work with all the largest search firms in the US, as well as a number of key private equity and venture capital firms. And the other area in which we're growing the demand is our members themselves. As more Latinos are joining corporate boards, we have seen that they are a big, huge influencer in getting another Latino on their board or a Latino of a peer that doesn't have an inclusivity in their boardroom. Now, the last piece of our framework is based on raising awareness. And this is what we do to answer the question that I get all the time, which is why are Latinos and also LGBTQ+, which I will share that in a second, are the least represented. And the reason is we ourselves are not a monolith. We are all comprised of different ethnicities in terms of, we come from different parts of the world, and it's hard for us to really come together in one common story to advance our mission and ourselves, as well as we are very hard to find. We don't have visible physical characteristics. We don't have Hispanic last names. We don't all speak Spanish or Portuguese, and that makes us invisible. So I love what Janelle said in terms of changing the word minorities and people of color to underrepresented majority, because at this point, LGBTQ+ and as well, Latinos are invisible simply for the fact that they cannot be found. And Shelly says it right, there is plenty of talent out there. Organizations like LCDA are focused to ensure they bring you this talent, make you aware of this talent that is being bypassed every single day. So I look forward to continue to, provide more insight, but that's what LCDA does. And as well, the Association of LGBTQ+ Association Corporate Directors is in the same vein. It's about fostering relationships, amplifying talent, and being a resource.
Thank you both. It's great. I really appreciate it. So we've heard a lot from Janelle about the value of diverse boards. I'm curious if anybody has a specific example of where having a diverse perspective at the boardroom table added value that might not otherwise have been there. Yeah, go ahead, Shelly.
No, I was just want to say something.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Shelly. Go ahead.
Okay, so thinking in regards to, I can think about even our current situation in regards to TALI at this point right now, but anyway, across it, we should always be challenging someone for a different perspective. And I want to add on to something that, Ozzie, you just made me think of this, and I think it needs to be said out loud. So number one, don't check the box. That is just irritating as crap, so let me be real clear about that. And again, it's not a contest. Look at people, determine what's best to fit. It might be a Black person, a Hispanic person, a LGBTQ, I always mess that up, someone from any type of a different background. The bottom line is to cast a wide enough net. It's not a matter that, oh my God, I've got to have one of each. Find what it is that you need and cast a wide net to get it. And so to me, and I mean, I could probably go through a number of different ways that, we've seen that show up and you win. And I think the most obvious one I'll go was from my last decisions around banking before I had left, obviously major organization, worked at PNC. We had a organization where you're dealing with small business owners that are doing startups, and you're trying to get funding and you're trying to work through that. And there were so many number of pieces, especially if it was a matter that you were tied to, I'm an African-American driven organization, or I'm a Asian driven organization, or Hispanic driven organization. And these things are put through a computer and automatically you have scores change and go. Well, I am that annoying person that goes, well, wait, if all this information was the same on one, it was on this, there's only one different, why is it doing that? I'm like, oh, it goes through the system, and you go, yeah, no, how about we unplug the system for a minute, give me some people in here actually going to think. And it's so funny because one of my team leaders was, he was actually transitioning to become a woman. He was one of the most powerful managers I've ever had. He was amazing. And now she was amazing. Just a great plethora of people of different backgrounds. My overnight staff, predominantly Black. We had a number of Hispanic people working there as well. And it was so funny because they easily were able to raise their hand and say, well, wait, it's because this box checked. And if you take it through and uncheck that box, the scores come out different. And again, these things, some of these systems were built so long ago, they were put in probably at the time for risk mitigation pieces. But here you have SAFE Act, you had all the things around, funding and terrorism, you had the things around the mortgage meltdown. Well, that was a really great opportunity as an institution for people to start thinking, okay, what things we just put on autopilot? Or it's like, if it's X and it's Y, oh, it must be Z. So really somewhere in here, you're assuming there's a calculation that this is automatically going to fail. So I think that's one of the places where it really showed up differently, is to have them bring their voice to the table to, and I'm an investor at that point as well, to come and talk to investors in regards to, if we change this, it went from 50 million in applications, and I think was somewhere in the neighborhood of about maybe like 35 million of that was booked. Within a 6-month period after a change was done, there were 159 million taken in applications going out to small business owners. And you gotta think too, in there's technology. So my daughter's still 2 tech companies. Well, when you say a tech company, it have to be 4 people. This isn't like your Microsoft, right? But again, it's tech. Oh, that's risky. Is it really? I don't know. Things kind of run the world right now. I think that's okay. But to have them go back and actually make a presentation, provide real world information to the board, have the board have broad enough insight and tact, the expertise to say, yeah, I didn't look at it that way. Why is it this way? You have people challenging each other and talking about that to say, okay, well, let's try it for 6 months without using that model. We're going to put the people in, we're going to train, we're going to have a consistent experience across the board. Completely change, triple what it was that were coming in. There were a number of new businesses that actually stood up, and that's just here in Pittsburgh. So, again, there's just this great opportunity. I always get concerned, especially having lived and come back, wherever it is, that we're just kind of shooting ourselves in the foot because we're so ingrained in what we consider to be normal and just our regular paradigms. So again, I've got to agree with Ozzie. The broader we can cast that net and pull in what you need. You don't have to go, oh my God, there's gotta be one Black, there's gotta be one Hispanic. What is it that you need? There's tons of people out there of all different types of colors and backgrounds that can satisfy and benefit you in that need.
Could I offer one board situation? McDonald's board. They brought on an African-American board member. His first name is John, and I can't remember his second name, but he was co-founder of Ariel Investments, which is the largest Black-owned investment companies in the United States. And brought him on in every board meeting. He mentioned, what are we doing to have a more diverse this, more diverse that, so diverse owners, diverse employees, diverse board, globally, what are we doing? And he kept bringing it up as it was appropriate in a lot of different discussions. So that caused McDonald's to have major changes. And they decided to appoint a head of CSR, they called it. And that's the cultural, the societal, and the I forgot the R stands, but at any rate, it's like ESG.
Mhm.
But at any rate, and my coachee, was appointed that person, global. So that they looked at every country and all the way down to every store in their diversity. And that changed the company a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's especially funny considering the predominant people that you're aiming at are diverse people. Like most of your advertising and who McDonald's largest customers that you're consciously aiming at are people of color. So.
And then the head of the CSR was Hispanic.
There you go, there you go.
Ozzie, any anecdotes you'd like to share?
No, I mean, Shelly's example is exactly the perfect example, as well as Janelle. I mean, it's all about being able to bring in a different perspective and asking those questions. You know, I do it when I hire new staff, you know, they ask new questions and that leads us to new ideas. And when you become a board member, it's all about the art of the question versus the art of the answer. So just having those diverse perspectives and, you know, checking that box in the application. And it could be from a personal experience, right? So from the, say, for example, the Federal Home Loan Bank system. A lot of our members now are interested in those opportunities because their parents were able to build, you know, buy their first home through the support of a loan they were able to get through, through a factor of the Federal Home Loan Bank policies. And they're now very passionate to bring that perspective and bring that experience to the board because they felt it so real to them. So it's all about the, you know, asking questions that maybe have never been asked before. So I agree with Janelle, and those are great examples.
You know, one thing I see in our portfolio companies is that they often want a very specific experience when they're bringing somebody onto the board. So they already have, you know, some founders, they already have some investors, and they're looking for this one specific thing. And very often it's, you know, somebody who's done a large M&A transaction in the very specific field that they are in. And that really, you know, narrows the pool of candidates.
What's nervous what you're going to get out of it too.
Yeah, so what's your take on that? How can companies add experience while adding diversity, and how do you respond to that when companies come at wanting that very specific experience?
So I think the thing that I would advise you, and this is something we practice through TALI, I always have our people come in as participants, and as they're going through this program, they're like, oh, I got a PhD in this, and I'm an engineer, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a this. It's like, yeah, no, like the doctor didn't pull you out and smack you on the butt and that's you were. What are the qualities you're looking for? So sat on the floor, mergers, acquisitions, obviously PNC gobbled up a whole bunch of stuff. That was an amazing thing to see. And the part that's really funny, I think in my experience, the people I saw that contributed to most, it was about characteristics. Who's the person that's going to really dig into what legally is required? Who's the person that's really going to dig into what those relationships need to be and what that bigger plan's going to be? I would always caution, because again, there's times, and remember where it started, older white men. So yeah, you did a large major, merger and acquisition back in like 1980. What have you done for me lately? That's not helping you today. So it really is super important. I will always invite people, because again, you're casting a wider net. What about a merger and acquisition do you need the experience for? Was it about relationships? Was it about how you built the plan out, how we stabilize the shareholders and make sure they stay with us as we're doing that? I think when you function or think about those types of pieces, because again, you might find a person who's done all the mergers and acquisition in the world, he might suck. Like, and I've seen that happen, where it's like, oh my God, this is a great attorney for, yeah, but nobody wants to talk to him. He's horrible. And he was like 8 months at a really big salary, I have to say. So again, I think I would invite you. I think you get a much wider net when you think about the characteristics you're looking for. To again, just my experience, but I also know that I usually get a lot better results when we go at things that way.
And just build on that, I've heard CEOs say, but I want somebody qualified.
Mm-hmm.
And that but means they're only gonna be white men who are qualified to do this. And again, it's just the same kind of challenging that we've been talking about here. Challenge your mind, look at other resources. And when I'm a coach, I work with CEOs, and I hear them say that. I simply tell them about the resources like what we have here. They've never heard of them. never thought that it existed, did not know that the resources were there. So they're functioning from a place of, shall we call it, ignorance. So we need to educate our culture, our business culture, and resources are out there to help you. There are many others as well. So it's a question of a mindset of seeking a larger talent pool and asking around in different groups than the ones you might have otherwise, just not the people within your network. There are other ones.
We will have to ask questions.
Sure.
So it seems to me one of the big problems is what's your definition of qualified? Because we're talking about diversity and all the different perspectives and points of view. But if that's not what's on your list of qualifications, then you're gonna miss it. If your list of qualifications is I want 30 years of experience doing this very thing, then it might be that there's no model for people to have those qualifications. But is that really a useful qualification for
That,
us?
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And to go down a little further in questioning of yourself about what are you really looking for, but then also to look for the resources that there are.
And you gotta remember too, like, that's where you can get out of the comfort zone. It's like, oh my God, now I gotta think. Lord have mercy. And it's funny, because I know people coming to our program, when I tell them like, hey, tell me who you are. Tell me what you're about. Don't tell me what you do. Because that's the easy part. I went 30 years. Well, why is it 30 years? Like, where'd that magic number come from? And I used to love doing that when I was in banking. I was like, okay, so you gotta have 10 years for this, why? And it was like, oh, well, that's what it's always been. Well, yeah, that's why we're sitting here today having this conversation, isn't it? So I love that you asked that, because that really is it. It would be so easy to stay in this just mind numbing. I can go on autopilot and kind of do this because I need 30 years of something. We never ask why. And then what is it that you're really trying, that 30 years it did what? You can find a whole bunch of people who've done 30 years of something that doesn't mean they're good at it. So, again, I get really very specific about what you want.
I'll say, first, when I encourage everyone to look at board opportunity specs first and analyze them. I'll be presenting as an expert witness for the California Department of Justice in AB 979, SB 826, and I kept on reiterating to them, look at those job specs for board opportunities. There is never years of experience. There's never minimum qualifications. There's never any of these metrics that say, okay, this is what the available pipeline is. If you look at them, it is C-suite, scaled organizations, collaborative, collegial, like these soft skill things that you're like, I don't know how to assess for that. I met the person, they're great. So look at those specs, because you really start figuring out when it comes to building this pipeline and being too specific and too targeted in your description that you are going to miss out on things. But first and foremost, look at those specs. It's very interesting to start assessing what is an essential candidate pipeline. Now, to answer the question specifically is, and I want to say a story. So the use of diverse organizations to help pipeline and make connections to candidates is barring on everything, everyone should do it. And I'll give you an example. When we were working with Ameriprise Financial, they gave me a very specific spec. Public CEO, bum, 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 bum. I'm like, all right, let me go at it. So then I presented several people on paper, and they selected an individual that they clearly said, you know what, this person doesn't meet the spec, but, let's meet them. So they were open to just, being a little bit more open about the spec itself. Long story short, that person was appointed in the shortest time I ever took Ameriprise Financial to find an individual. And it was because they used us as an alternative sourcing solution. And they said, I 100% know that the search firm would never have presented this person because our criteria was so specific. So having a casting a wider net allows you to really be able to expand that pool, as well as it's all about building relationships. Like if I could present to you Fred Diaz, the former president and CEO of Mitsubishi North America, and I said, hey, he's ready to talk to you tomorrow. Will you say no to me? Probably not. That person is now on 4 public boards and very influential, and also a number of private equity and venture capital. But it's about really trying to figure out is this person something more than just what I'm specifically looking for? And that just requires intentionality and the want to build your connections and want to learn from people and build those relationships. So having a very focused pool or a spec does deter from those magic opportunities to happen.
Ozzie said something really super important, intentionality around all of these pieces. That's critical. I always try to tell people, take that opportunity to meet, get to know each other, spend some time, dip your toe in the water, those types of things ahead of time before it's a matter of like, oh my goodness, we gotta have somebody by next month. And that tends to be what happens. And sometimes I think that's intentional. It's like, oh, we know what we're looking for. Don't worry, I'll be golfing with somebody Sunday. Okay, well, did you take me golfing with you? My clubs are in the car. You didn't even ask me. So, that's, Ozzie hit the nail on the head. I think just making the effort to do it when you're not consciously looking. And whatever opportunity to actually connect people that way for our Executive Leadership Academy people, especially those who are moving into critical leadership positions. Well, of course, person of color, your fear is that, oh my goodness, I started pointing other people of color and they're really bad. You're never getting this chance again, right? And I know I've had that experience. And so how is it then that you're almost test driving people to a certain extent. It's like, well, let me stop and meet the professional leaders, Black people that I know who would be interested in a role like this and connect them together now. So when the opportunity comes up, this isn't the first time. It's like, oh, let me call Shelly. Well, this is the very first time I'm introducing you to Shelly over there. And it's like, oh, I don't really know enough about it. And
Yeah,
that's
Shelly,
that's
have to give Ozzie credit. When we first met, we connected on LinkedIn and he said, there's no overlap between our networks. Like, look at this, here's an area, Megan, where you can do better in your network. And I think that was a really good insight to me that we all need to be proactively building our networks in advance. If we want to be doing this. So I guess building on that, I know there are a number of founders in the room, and so for people who are building their boards, what resources or suggestions do you have for them to help thinking about building a board? What companies should they be looking about? How should they be thinking about the process holistically as well about going about building it?
I think it would be really great to make a list of all of the different board organizations that are women and, I use that term, minorities or underrepresented majority. We should make a list of all of the different groups, so you can just go down those and
we were into that in the last meeting. It's like, okay, so who's on that list? Not me. That's always the challenge.
One that we're working on within admission boards that work. I always take a list for those, and happy to share that. So
there's a lot in the women's area. There's a lot in the African American as well that, like the Women's MBA program or association, they have a corporate board segment. The financial analysts of African American women, they have getting on board segment. So a lot of the type of groups have a segment that has to do with getting on boards.
I want to open it up to questions in just a minute, but other thoughts here on kind of process, or how to start thinking about your board before?
I want to go back to what you just said. The other piece too is start at people. Just start at people. Like if we were here and I don't remember to bring cards with me. Like, if there was something that resonated in there, let's meet for coffee. Or let's call and get on the phone for a few minutes. Tell me more about your organization. Because we start doing that now and our next cohorts get ready to come in, or we've got ELA people who just wrapped up a couple of years like, oh my goodness, they have the perfect person that you should meet. And again, I think it's through those things and just starting to, again, I'm gonna keep saying cast the wider net. I think that's where we really have the opportunity to, and remember, especially for me, so it's near and dear to my heart when we talk about technology. Technology is the reason my daughter doesn't live in Pittsburgh. And that's just sad. So she graduates much earlier than her peers. She's had 4 job offers on the table going into her last semester. Graduates top of her class. She's a computer programmer. I hear that's not easy. She's really smart. Okay. And so you had a job in Philadelphia, actually Vanguard. Great opportunity. A job out of San Diego, job out of Seattle, here in Pittsburgh. The best thing when it came up with was a help desk. And don't get me wrong, help desk is important. Yeah, no, that's not happening. So she sold her first company at 24, second company right when she hit 30. Help desk, really? And for what? And so again, to make those connections in different ways, was me talking about TALI and being here in Pittsburgh. Yeah, but we need to consciously be thinking, that's one of the things I love about this, sounds like Ozzie and Janelle do as well. Because we know what the residual payout, the benefit is to all of it. Everybody wins in this. So it really is, it's truly a fulfilling thing, but definitely make the, take the opportunity, make the effort. I do not accept on LinkedIn, invites from, recruiters. I will not. Absolutely not. Pick up the phone call, happy to get you connected to the right people. Because it needs to be intentional. It needs to be about, it's not hurting into, oh, great, she's got 300 black people on her end. I'm not doing that. I don't ever see that. Go ahead, Ozzie.
Well, I accept any invitation, so send them this way. And I'll just say last remarks on that is, there is no excuse. There are multiple resources to be able to connect to talent, period. You have your search firms, your own personal network, and now organizations like Shelly and I's and Janelle's, and being able to really support you. We work with an organization called Gangels that sends us a number of board opportunities from startup Series A, B, C. And all we do is we support them. We promote the opportunity to our 520 plus members and growing. And we give them the option to put their hat in the ring that they are interested in learning more. And through the work that we've done with Gangels, we've been able to connect 10 of our members to board opportunities that have been, successfully appointed as either advisory board members or board members. So just include it as part of your strategy to reach out to organizations like ours to support you.
Thank you very much. I'd love to open it up now to questions.
So mine is more about recruiting that invisible group of people, like so that LGBTQ plus community where it's like, that's not something that you wear on your chest. It's not something that in a job application you fill out, and sometimes it's not even appropriate to ask someone in the working environment. So how do you diversify your board with that sort of group of people when it's something that isn't necessarily something you even know about someone?
Ozzie, you want to take that one?
Oh my God, absolutely. So, that's the reason why I'm very passionate of this work. And I look at numbers every single day in terms of the composition of boards and the progress and trends. And the latest data points that came out regarding Russell 3000, there was a Wall Street Journal article and a Reuters article that really highlighted that there is advancement, I think, in representation of underrepresented majority on boards. But if you look at those numbers, and I'm being very real here, that there is an increase within certain communities versus others. For example, and I'm speaking from the LGBTQ plus and Latino community, we are specific 20% of the population for Hispanic Latinos, but the least represented on corporate boards. I live in this world every single day. I know there's talent, and everyone that I work with either says, oh yeah, I knew about Fred Diaz, or oh my God, I didn't know Fred Diaz. I didn't even know he was Latino. For example, we have individuals in our membership named Stuart Stockdale, Cheryl Miller, Brian Goldstein, so on and so forth. And every time I present them to a search firm or to a company, they just say, I never knew they were Latino. Or the same with LGBTQ plus. And I even am surprised. I'm like, I didn't know they were Latino or LGBTQ plus, right? Because they don't, they're the visual piece of how our communities have always been, our world is. So it's around, just once again, as Shelly said, it's not a contest. It's not checking the box. It's just ensuring that you are leveraging as many resources as you have available. And as well, we tell all of our members, and as well, that you do have to take the extra step to show your authentic self. And your authentic self is not only what you do for business, but also who you are personally, where you were raised, where you were born. And that's really important. But that's something that we're trying to continue to push, to say there is plenty of talent in all these underrepresented majority communities. It's just that you have to be intentional to find them. It's a battle we're going to continue to face, but we have seen progress. We just need the support of our Janelle and Shelly and others to really think about how can we have an inclusive board that takes that really is advantage of the business model. Lastly, the bar has not been lowered. The best of the best get those board opportunities. So even we stay within our own community, the pipeline can be, 10 Latinos or 10 African Americans. You have to be the best African American or best, leader. They always pick that you have to do that. So you have to be prepared. At the end of the day, the bar has not been lowered, but that's something that we deal with. I didn't get the name of the person who asked the question, but it's something very real to me because I, as a father of twins, my son, we had him via surrogacy. My daughter is genetically connected to me. She's Latina. My son is not. He is being raised in a Latino household. So I can only imagine when he grows up that people will say, well, you're not Latino. He's like, well, I am. And he's, Polish as Polish can be. And I think about that. And that's what really drives me to ensure that we really think of inclusivity and take away that visual perspective to say, I didn't see diversity. I'm like, well, there is diversity there. So you have to ask the questions. So it's very personal to me.
Thank
I
you.
think the other piece in there too, is that it's just like you said, not everybody wears everything. And I know banking, oh my goodness, only recently. And a very good friend of mine, very successful, he's still in banking, still at PNC. And it was funny because like I knew him very well, just like, hey, your husband, come over, and I love to cook, so come to my kitchen, that works well too. But that's the catch, is how is that we're trying to connect with other people, and yeah, that's where I started connecting with a lot more people. And most people in the bank didn't know that his husband, and he was wonderful, he ran a florist, beautiful florist shop. And that's the catch, is like, how are we just casting those wider nets in our normal connectivity? Because that opens up a much broader world. And I think that it's so often like we go about it like it's a task. Oh my God, I gotta check this one. Don't worry about that. I just think that broader, making those connections, knowing what your resources are, how you're connected with people, any opportunity to be in wider circles, I think helps.
One quick thought, the LGBTQ is your local LGBTQ groups. And go to them. Contacts there.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
In today's world, how would you put about a geographic location in finding a board member? Because if you were saying your daughter had to go to a different area and everything too. So, does that matter to have someone on your board who's close and in this area, or can you actually look for somebody, connect with somebody and have a real effective board member and have it be limited? I'm sure.
Even COVID threw all of that out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even for us right now, even through, our program right now, at the end of this year, because we've already had people who, South Carolina, got somebody who was in from Indiana, we've got at least 6 people over the past 2 cohorts that were coming in and out, and it's like, okay, we don't need to have them coming in and out, we're just as effective on Zoom. Actually, we were better on Zoom than the person who's sitting here. So again, I think if anything, that just offers more opportunity, a more rich opportunity in doing things. I would say that as you're doing that though, make sure you're prepared to set that up for success and cause that activity. Because there's times where people are like, oh, you're Bob Joy, he's from, he'll be on Zoom, but you really haven't done anything to connect Bob or introduce or have him feel integrated and connected to everyone else. And it is just as easy to do it by Zoom now. So I'd say go with their best talent regardless of where they are.
And just a thought though, also, whenever we have a virtual board member, I like to have requirements that all board members get together at least once a year.
Yeah.
And at the site of the company or one of the company's sites, so that they have touch points and they get to know each other with the site, we meet together. Now, COVID restrictions, but a little bit of balance there, but it doesn't open it up.
I would just say every board I'm on has a remote board member. And I think the best ones actually have remote board members, and then very intentionally once or twice a year bring everybody together and make that socialization time, which the local boards often don't. So I think they end up actually being higher functioning boards when you are more intentional about bringing people together. And once or twice. So, yeah.
Great.
Great question. Questions?
I have something to add to that. Well, first of all, when we ask anyone who's interested in board services, make sure you cast a wide net in terms of your network, because you don't have to be from California to be on a California board. You don't have to be from New York to be on a New York board. You want everyone to know who you are. So casting a wide net from a recruitment perspective, that's what we say. But there are 2 things that do that do encourage a company to say, I want someone locally. One is travel, planes, trains, and automobiles. So to get to Utah, in the middle of St. George, Utah, will take planes and trains and automobiles for someone to get there. And that's a real issue that people are like, I don't want to travel that far to get to the board meeting. The second is that there are certain types of organizations that want regionally focused individuals or based on residents because they want them to really understand the community. So banks, insurance, and certain types of organizations really want someone locally because they want to be connected to the community and really hear them out. So there's some nuances regarding the proximity of members, but I think Zoom and all, I think it's only probably maybe the 5% or 10%. After that, it's pretty open.
If local connections are important to you, then it would need to be a local person. But if you're thinking bigger, and whatever it is you're producing can have a national customer base, then you could have a national focused board members.
You can even think international. from that perspective.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all so much for coming. Janelle, thank you for coming all the way from Chicago. Shelly, thank you for coming out today. And Ozzie, it's great to have you logged on despite the snowstorm. So thank you very much. I really, really valued your perspectives today. And hopefully everybody came away with some food for thought.